So in this video, I'm going to show you how I do drum design with the Easy Drummer 3 pack. It's a very standard stock standard pack, and how to get the kit to sound really modern, really punchy and aggressive at the same time. If you want to leave any comments, you're more than welcome to do that. If you want to subscribe as well. And if you want to have your song mix or take your sound to the next level, the link is down in the description. Let's get into it. So in this video, we're going to take a look at how I created the drum sound in this particular mix with this. It's not the whole kit, but it's the snare and the rooms and the overheads and all that stuff being worked in. But there are actually multiple kits that make up the entire sound. So this is the snare, the main focus point of the drum kit. And then for the cymbals, we are using Crim. And then I think we're just using kick samples, but we're just triggering off of Easy Drummer. I don't like to export the audio sample down to a WAV because I like to always change things and be creative, but these are basically the sounds that we're working with. And then we have some samples. That's one sample, another sample, another sample, all just triggering off of this, and that kind of gives us this snappy, modern, punchy sound. And again, this is all created from listening from the very beginning, so I don't mix into a template. I just have a basic setup with some buses routed, just so that I don't have to keep doing that every time I open a session. But essentially, every time I do a mix, this is all completely blank. I won't even have the sample thing set up. I'll just have these buses from bass all the way down to the pre-master bus setup. I should do the effects over here, so it goes all the way down here. So I should do the effects as well, but I haven't done that yet. So usually I start from a blank canvas. There's nothing on the master bus, nothing on the instrumental bus, nothing on the drum bus, and then I'll listen to the song and see what it needs, and then I test out. So for example, on the drum bus, when I'm busy mixing and I think it's time to add compression on the bus, I'll go through some compression choices for the bus, whatever they might be, and I'll see what sonically works and what it's doing to the actual kit as a whole. But in this case, we landed on the JST BG drums, which is pretty sick plugin. And sometimes it can also end up being something like DF Comp as well, which I used in another mix, which worked well. So it's really mix dependent. Get rid of this. No. So let's start. So seeing as it's just the snare for the main part of this, we have the snare top going into 3/4, which is here. No, sorry, here. Just ignore this. 3/4, snare bottom 5/6, and then we go to the overheads because we're not using any of the tom stuff. And then we're using the overheads into 7/8, we're using the overhead kit into 9/10, overhead mono into, which I'm actually not using the overhead mono, but I decided to not use it, so I'll kind of listen to what it's doing. I'll take it away and then see what it does, and if I like it when I take it away, I'll keep it, and then if I like it when it's turned up, I'll keep it. And then the ambience into 13/14, Let's see if I kept the ambience. I probably did. Yeah, room. I just labeled it as room. And then ambience mono into 1516, which I kept a bit of, minus 6 dBs. And then the crunch into 1718, but you see I took the crunch out because I didn't like what it was doing to the kit. So these are all decisions made based on hearing or listening to what it's doing. I haven't changed anything in these settings. Everything is stock standard. So the kick I'm triggering, that's the main kick. That's what I'm using for the sample. Kick room, got rid of, it was too much. Kick comp, I don't think there's any kick comp. We'll take a listen just now. So all these kicks can be ignored. Sorry, this kick trigger is actually not being used at all. I think I just left it there because there's actually nothing. No, I lied, it is. Yeah. It is. Okay, so the kick is there. Kick room, no. Kick comp is. Yep. This is the kick room, which is triggering off of Easy Drummer. And this, I don't think there's anything on it. Top. Snare bottom. What is this nonsense? Overheads. Mono's not there, room. Punch is off. Parallel comp. So that's the main focus on the kit, and then we have the samples as I've played before. And the cymbals. Might be a little bit of harshness in them. That's fine for now. So this is basically making up the entire kit. So the kick goes to the kick sum. Kick comp goes to drums. The room goes to room bus. Snare top goes to snare sum, which is a bus. Snare bottom goes also to snare sum, which is a bus. Overheads to overhead sum, which is a bus. Same thing here. The rooms go to the room sum. Room mono, room sum. And the parallel comp I left to stereo out because I think it was a bit too compressed sounding when I sent it to all the buses, because there's a lot of compression happening on the buses. So we'll just on the master bus, this happens maybe like half an hour into it. I started doing this kind of stuff, but not at the beginning. At the beginning, I think it clouds or at least it clouds my judgment. There's too much of it and there's too much stuff, and then I can't make simple decisions at the beginning which affect the decisions that come later. So rather have a blank canvas, nothing on the buses, first listen to the tones and kind of shape them a bit, and then start doing these heavy moves. Otherwise you put all of this compression and all of this saturation onto tones that might have problem areas, and then they will just enhance those problem areas, and then you end up chasing your tail trying to figure out what it is, and it's all this stuff that's on the bus and everything's being fed into it, and then there might be like, I don't know, too much harshness in the cymbals and the snare and other instruments, and then you end up, that harshness becomes enhanced by all of this stuff that happens here. So I do this once I've taken care of the balance and all that stuff, and that worked for me far better. So virtual tape, the FG Red, which I've been using lately. It's not a harsh ratio. Fast attack, fast release, drive up to 5, high pass filter 32, and so the drive is just saturation, I guess. I try to do this wherever I can, because the more you do this in little stages, this is heavy-handed, but when you do this in small stages across the whole mix, it all adds up, and it gives it that sort of high-end, expensive sound. This is just some shaping 29, just dropping off so it's tightened up, controlling some stuff that was a bit pokey here, and then just making up for it with a little boost, tiny moves. And then into a limiter with the punchy setting. So like I say, always in these mixes, always flick through these settings, because they drastically change the sonic perception of the way the mix sounds. Like transparent sounds different to punchy, dynamic sounds different to all around. These things make quite a big difference on the limiter, so it's good to note. And then I have a drum crash bus, very little amount of kick going to it. Then I have a pre-master bus, which I do a whole lot of automation and also mix stuff, which the drums are also feeding into. This is like towards the end of the mix in context, so I won't explain that now. Multi-band, and then into the instrumental bus, the drums go into here. FG Gray, fast attack, fast release, not an aggressive ratio, high pass filter. Very simple, and this is catching the snare peak, so it's pushing the snare even further down, because essentially what you want to do to get a drum sound like this is a shit ton of compression. Yeah, a guy commented on one of my video reels the other day that this is fake what I'm doing, and that this is like over compressed bullshit, and you know, that kind of attitude, which is fine. He's entitled to have that opinion. However, if you're into doing modern productions and it's something you want to do as a business or something like that, then you have to stick with the times, and a lot of compression is what is needed to get a modern sound. So that's why we use it. So all of this squashed compression is what creates that drum sound. I'll get into the mixing now. It's just good to know this stuff, because it kind of sets you up for understanding why these decisions are made. So these compressors that are like hitting everywhere are essentially clamping the snares down and keeping them tight sounding, so that everything sounds very explosive. And that's the whole, my opinion, the whole point of this compression is to create like a perceived energy that's happening. So like if you have the attack and release setting a certain way on a snare, you can make it sound like the drum is hitting way harder than he actually is. And the same thing if you go to the rooms, for example, and you're smashing it with this distressor style compressor to like 14 dBs, it sounds like someone's going nuts on the drum kit, and that's the whole point, is to get that energy out of the kit so it doesn't sound so sort of laid back and monotone. So yeah, drum bus, and that's the compressor. So let's take a look and see let's play a little bit of the song just after all of that boring talking. it's a pretty cool drum sound, very snappy. So we'll start with the kick. So this is just a sample that I have, and the sample choices are all made in context, trying different things, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't, figuring it out, getting the bass sound of the kick the way you want it, and then shaping it from there. And then I just have some saturation on the Brit 4KE, drive up at 12, just to add some sort of body to the kick, and just to give it a bit of analog sound. So I'll turn it on and off. Sort of like fills out the lower mids. And brings it a little bit more up front. And that's going to the kick sum, and then we have the kick comp. Let me just loop this. So we have okay, so kick comp. This is just taking out a shitload of 5,000 hertz. It was a bit too much. I wasn't really looking for that. I was looking just for the characteristics that it had within this area, and then this was too much. Then we have the kick room. That's on the room bus, which I'll show you a bit later. But essentially it's just a room sample. So snare top. This is going to a snare verb, which is here. So before the verb, I have a high pass at 400, low pass at 7,000, just to get rid of the mud. And then I'm going into this, I think it's a slate. No, it's not. Liquid Sonics, lustrous verb. These are the settings. I think they stock. I like the way it sounded as I loaded it up. And then I have a de-esser, which is essentially pulling this reverb more to the back, so it's not so up front. Off. On. Just pushes it back so it's not so in your face. It's a nice trick, it works very well. Okay, so snare top. Let me switch the verb off for now. Very nice snare. So the first thing is just taking care of some resonances that weren't working. And then some saturation, bringing body into the snare, and then clipping the transients, drive at 12 o'clock because it's cool and I like it. Brit 4KE, kind of turn these two off. It's very subtle, but it all adds up at the end. And then we're boosting 8K at 3.4 dB, small little boost, just to brighten it up a little bit. It was a bit too dull. And then we're just compressing it. These attack settings are from this preset. I usually just go with the preset if I'm compressing a snare. I don't want to think too much about it because it's the samples that are making up most of the sound anyway. See how that just, it like squashes it. So you get that very snappy sound. So this main snare is like really compressed sounding, and then the samples will kind of fill in the rooms and the ambience and the body. This is mainly just the tone. Then we have the snare bottom, which is just a little bit of nodes, and then a high pass filter at 150. Just cleaning up anything that's down there. Overheads. It's going to the overhead sum. This as well. So let's see what's on that overhead bus, because we're not doing anything. So same thing. High pass at 176. Some nodes. Any of these sort of honky frequencies in the rooms or in the overheads can cause problems with the vocals. So it's good to kind of find those resonances that are not working and can cause issues with the vocals. They can cloud the vocal up quite a bit, so it's good to clean that up. But don't overdo it, because you can also kill the tone. Then we have some saturation, also drive at 12. Same thing. Boosting 5.78 dBs at 8K. It was a bit dull. And then just compressing. Just doing like 6 dBs just to keep it down. Okay. So the rooms, they're also just going to a bus, and I believe the room snare sample's not going to the same bus. Okay, so let's take a look. The rooms are all being processed just on the bus. Let me switch all of this off. You can hear, like, just from listening to it, I can hear I probably boosted the rooms to some degree in the upper mids to get more of a, this is hard to describe, but let's, okay, not here, here. So this, I'll play it on and off, leave that on. You hear how the rooms are very flat when this 1500 boost is not engaged. The rooms sound very flat, and when you bring this area up, it sort of allows the rooms to sit over the main snare and give it that big sort of ambient sound. And when you switch it off, let me play it with the main snare so you can maybe hear what I'm talking about. So what you should hear is when this is engaged, the room all of a sudden sort of puts a bubble around the snare, which gives it that ambience. So it's off at the moment. On. You see how the snare all of a sudden fills up and has this body to it. It's off. On. Okay, I just noticed that the snare changes tuning. That's probably because there's another snare hit somewhere up here. I must play with that. I didn't realize that these MIDI notes are on different, and that actually, so interesting. Okay, I don't know why it's doing that. So if you have a snare hit here, for example, and you change it from a D1 to a D#1, it'll change the tuning. That's also so you can play around with that to get different overtones. And then I was just cutting out 600 because I wanted to cut this sort of room sound out and then boost the desirable sound, which for me was up here. And that's why I did this cut at 600. It was a bit too ear piercing. Okay. Didn't even realize I had that pitch change in the snare. So yeah, that is essentially what's happening on the rooms. And then I just have a high pass filter at 80 just to clean up anything that might hit the compressor. And then same thing, drive up to 11.4, Brit 4KE, saturation. Okay, just bear in mind that the main snare is playing, but let me actually turn it off. So we just hear the room. Boosting at 8K, 2.49 dBs. Sorry, boosting at 8K, 2.49 dBs just for a bit of brightness. And then, I don't know if the song was playing while I was explaining this, but this is just to give it some more body, to shape the transients differently, cut them off a bit, smooth them out. Over here, we are cutting again at 633, 3 dBs, and then just slamming the shit out of it with this distressor. So all of this processing adds energy to the rooms, and what you want to get out of the rooms, even if they sound trashy as hell, is just to get a shitload of energy out of them so that it sounds like the drummer's, you know, going crazy, and then just send like -15 to the drum crash. Not too much. You can play with it and see what what comes out. So snare top, snare bottom, overheads, room, crunch, we don't have room mono, that's to the rooms, parallel crunch, nothing. Exactly how it came out. Just add some character, I guess. So let's hear what those shells sound like. Yeah, the snare has a lot of disperse to it, you know, it really has a lot of punch, body, ambience, and that's kind of what I like to go for. I mean, this mix still needs a bit of work. It's a little bit harsh in some areas that I'm going to clean up. It's not a complete mix yet, but it's close enough. It sounds decent. So next we have the cymbals. So with cymbals, I do a high pass at 250 to take out any lows that aren't necessary, and then I boost the upper mids at about 1200 usually, 4 dBs, and this gives the cymbal like that room sound, because often cymbals can sound too flat and they don't, you know, because if you listen to cymbals while a drum is in a room, that's the sound that you get, is this sort of room wash kind of sound that our ears are accustomed to hearing, and this is what I'm trying to boost up to get that sort of sonic picture. And then as you can see, this boost is bringing up a lot of stuff that's not really pleasant in this area, so I'm just shaping it to cut out this harshness. So I'll take this off. And then because I'm cutting here, I'm just boosting at 8,000 just to bring back some brightness. So this is just a very subtle shape to get the sound that I want out of them. See how flat they sound when this boost is turned off. On. So it brings the cymbals to life, as far as I can tell. And then just a bit more cutting because they were way too harsh in the mix. This sometimes happens. And that's pretty much it on the cymbals. Didn't do any compression. They're going to the drum bus, so they compress enough. So let's see what the kit sounds like without any samples engaged. Kick sample. Yes. Oh no, that didn't work. So essentially this is just the tone of the kit. It's just the foundation, and then we build in the weight and the punch and the attack with the samples. So that's the idea. So you get the tone, foundation, you have to figure out what is the right tone for the song, what is going to work well with the samples that you have in your arsenal, and you have to understand the samples that you have and experiment with them, see what makes them tick, what makes them work and what doesn't, and then you'll get a good idea. And then you can, my suggestion is to buy like as many samples as you can with kicks, snares. Buy fucking hundreds of them if you have to, and go through them and figure out, even if it takes you a whole year to go through all of them, figure out which ones do the job and which ones don't, and then start filtering out the ones that don't and keep the ones that work. So yeah, that's just the tone of the kit. So I'm going to start, so what I'll do is I'll start building in the heavy sort of attack with the samples, and I'll bring them in one by one. And then you'll notice how the kit starts to get full and bigger. So you see, it's interesting how that happens, how the kit just starts to expand. So we'll do it again, just so I had this automated in that part because I didn't like the way it sounded when it was on its own, but in context of the mix it sounds fine. instruments, it sounds very balanced. So you can hear how the drum kit sort of sounds very three-dimensional with the rest of the instruments, and that's the whole idea. But like I said, this mix is a little bit pokey here and there, but that I will fix at another stage or go through at another stage. As long as you get the instruments sounding cohesive and they sound like they belong together, that's kind of my idea of how a drum kit needs to work, is that the drums are the foundation of every single mix, and they dictate what the mix is going to sound like. So if your drum kit doesn't sound good, the mix is going to fall apart from the beginning. So getting the snare, for example, which is the hardest part of this entire process, to sort of expand but still sound punchy, but also not too punchy where it starts getting ear piercing, like in some areas of this mix that I mentioned, which I'm going to address. You want to have that three-dimensional depth to the snare sound, so that the rest of the instruments can be highlighted. And with the bad snare sound, it's going to be difficult to balance the rest of the instruments. So the drum production, I would say, is the most important part to focus on the mix, or to get your skill level up. I would say learn drum design as best you can. So kick sample is Jens Borgren. The polarity has been flipped, and this is going to a kick sample bus, and I've just taken out let me just kind of loop this part. Just taking out some of that lower mid, it was too much, and then just balancing the low end and some of this top end with a multiband. I find a multiband compression is good at not removing the frequencies but just controlling them, and this is a good way to not remove it but just keep it under control. Seventh kick by I think it's two Madsen, I believe. Yeah, two Madsen. Is it Madsen? Yeah. I think he produces Meshuggah and a lot of other bands. Kick sample 3. Jumper kick by Andrew Wade. Polarity is flipped. Because if you have to check these, if the drums are I don't know if phase is the right word, but you have to check the polarity so that they don't cancel each other out in terms of low end. So you always check this, flip it, and see if you can hear the low end being cancelled out. Here also cutting lower mids at 200 and too much of that knockiness, and again too much clickiness at 3K. You just have to listen to if this stuff builds up. So you have to listen, and use your ears, and kind of, if you hear something in the mix that's too clicky or too bright somewhere, look at the kick, look at the snare, and see where it's coming from, and kind of assess where the source of the problem is, and then just tame it, pull it down, see if that does the trick. If it does the trick, move on, don't obsess too much, and then Then we have the snare samples. High pass filter, just taking out any low end that might be coming through. So I just want to note here, the reason why this high pass filter is happening with this kind of slope, you see this like sort of emptiness up here, is because I could be doing it in a way where it's like this, right? But what I'm trying to do by pulling it down is to just shave off some of the low fundamental, which is too much. So you'll notice it. See how it's popping up like that, and that low fundamental is a bit too much. So when I bring this up, I allow more of that fundamental to come through. But if I bring it down, I'm shaping it in a way that it's just rolling some of that fundamental off, so it's not too hectic and it's not hitting the compressor so hard. See how that tiny move makes quite a big difference on how that fundamental is perceived. And it's little incremental moves like this that make up the difference at the end of the mix to how the snare sounds. So again, just brings it down a bit, makes it a bit quieter. Just it's also being triggered. This is a snare sample that I made, boosting at 8K, and then drive again, just shaping the transients a bit. Okay, so that's just okay, it's automated, but that's just a room sample. And then these all going to sample, snare sample, kick sample bus, which is Pro MB, controlling the low end again. Just a little bit, because to my ears it was kind of too much above the snare, these low frequencies, and that's kind of what I try to listen for, is that the low sort of mids is not like above the snare in terms of volume. And then the snare is, sorry, we have more stuff here. Okay, I switched these off because I didn't like what they were doing, and more controlling. Without taking away the frequency. So the point of this again is not to take that frequency away and cut it, but just to control it. Snare sample, boosting the sort of upper mids just to get more of that room sound on the snare. See how it like fills the body of it up. Transify, so I'm just taking some of the treble out of the top end of the snare because it was too much. Sometimes you can take, if the low note is too excessive and too sort of sample sounding, you can just play with these attack settings. So this is just taking attack out of the treble part of the snare, so the very top end. And if I were to, like, for example, if you look at the snare sample and you see an excessive low note which is going too much, like there, see how dominant that is compared to the rest of the frequency spectrum. See how it starts pushing up. And so with that, you would go with a transient shaper, click on the bass or maybe the low mids, and then kind of pull the attack down, and let's see what it does. See, you can soften that hit, that low note if it's too much, which can sometimes happen on these very aggressive samples, and then you can just get it to sound a bit less, which I didn't do in this case. I think I did it on the drum bus, where I just kind of pulled back at 207 by a dB. And then attenuating with this tube setting, I think, like I've said before, is you choose the frequency spectrum and then you attenuate that with this plugin, and then boosting 3.53 dBs at 8,000 hertz. Controlling this low note again because it was too much. Okay, it's not really doing much, but more so here. And this is just quickly in and out, controlling this like 5,000 to 6,000 hertz area, which can be a bit abrasive. Switch it. And then just focus the snare more around the mid-range than the upper spectrum. And then boosting here, I think I've gone through this here. Just bringing more of that body up than, because without it it's quite flat. Off. See how it sounds very like, I don't know how to describe it, like you're hitting like a wet blanket or something, and then when you bring these sort of mid-range frequencies up, it gives it that body. So see how it's more, brings that room sound over it again, and that's what I'm trying to do with this snare. Overhead sum we've been through. Drum crush, I'm just slamming it through this FG red. Fast attack, I don't know why the release settings, it should be faster. I'll just leave it where it was. And then driving again, doing saturation wherever I can. I think that's saturation. And then here again, boosting the mid-range. To get that sound. And that gives me that. Trigger. But yeah, so the whole idea is to shape everything the way you want it to sound, and what I wanted was a very punchy snare, but with a lot of sort of room ambience to it, and something that sounded a bit different and a bit unique. So we can see where that sort of harshness is coming from. I think it's coming from the guitars. Could be. Let's take a look. See. So sorry about this, but let's go take a look. Let's see. Quickly take care of this because it's annoying the shit out of me. of tweaking here and there, but it's better. Cool. We're going to check now and see if there's anything else going on. Let's just hear another part of the song to hear what the snare sounds like on a different groove. Way better. Okay, so yeah, so I think that's pretty much it. We'll take a look at what's happening on the master bus. I think we have gone through all of this. Yeah, we have gone through this. Instrumental bus, we have gone through that. Snare verb. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this drum tone. Again, a lot of this design is done with kind of listening and choosing. Like I said, I work from a blank canvas and then I choose each element of the kit without anything on the drum buses, without anything on the channels or anything, just so everything's raw, so that I can get an idea of what everything's sounding like, and then I start building from there, experimenting, playing with different things, and kind of getting to what I want it to sound like in my head, or what's going on in my head. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you would like to subscribe, you're more than welcome again, or leave a comment. That would also be cool, and see you in the next one. Have a good one.